During the budget debate, the opposition MP, Mr. Julian raised several concerns about the government's policies. But when you listen carefully to the speech, some of the questions could have been stronger and more direct. Let's look at 3 key moments in the speech and the tougher questions that should have been asked. Welcome to Scoping Jamaica. This is a channel where we slow things down and look at the numbers. What was actually said, what was actually done, and whether the policies actually make sense. Here we don't get distracted by fancy words, long speeches, or political theater. We strip it right back to the bare facts, the numbers, the policies, and the real-world outcomes. So on this channel, we don't argue personalities. We examine policies. We don't repeat talking points. We ask questions, and we don't accept narratives without evidence. This is a space where you think for yourself, where we take sense out of nonsense, and where the hard questions are asked, without fear, without prejudice, and without apology. If that sounds like the kind of conversation Jamaica needs more of, then you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Almost 5 months since Melissa, there are still hundreds of Jamaicans who go to sleep with no proper shelter. What is the plan for them?
At this point in the speech, the opposition raised the issue of hurricane recovery. The question that was asked was, almost 5 months since Melissa, there are still hundreds of Jamaicans who go to sleep with no proper shelter. What is the plan for them? Now that is an important question, but it could have been much stronger. A tougher question would have been, Minister, how much of this $1.44 trillion budget is actually allocated to rebuilding homes for hurricane victims, and how many families will be rehoused this year? This kind of question forces specific numbers and real accountability, and it makes it harder for the government to give a vague political response. In the following clip, the opposition challenged the government's digital tax policy. The question that was asked was, why did the government increase the threshold to provide relief to consumers 2 years ago only to take it back now? Again, this highlights a contradiction, but the question could have been more direct. A stronger challenge would have been, Minister, how much additional cost will the new digital tax place on the average Jamaican household that relies on online shopping? This question would bring the issue directly to the pocket of the Jamaican consumer, making the impact very clear to the public.
If that is indeed what is being proposed, then a serious question arises. Because that government 2 years ago made a very deliberate policy decision to raise the threshold on online purchases, increasing the custom duty exemption from $50 to $100 US and from $500 to $1,000 for persons traveling into the country. That was a conscious choice to reduce the cost burden to Jamaicans, and it was met with huge applause. Now, the digital services tax seems to be working against that relief. This inconsistency needs to be explained. You cannot, on the one hand, increase the threshold to give consumers a break, and then on the other hand, you take back what you have just extended.
In the next clip, you will see the moment. The opposition questioned how the digital tax would work. The questions asked were, how are the taxes going to be collected? Who is responsible for remitting it? What is the enforcement mechanism? These are technical questions, but they could have gone even further. A sharper question would have been, Minister, if the government itself cannot clearly explain how this digital tax will work, how can businesses and consumers be expected to comply with it? That kind of question directly challenges the competence and clarity of the policy itself.
And beyond the inconsistency, there is the practical question of how this is going to be implemented. How are the taxes going to be collected? Who is going to be responsible for remitting it? What is the mechanism for enforcement across hundreds and thousands of transactions from foreign platforms? The minister owes the House an explanation. She has been here twice, and I must say, having spoken twice, it is as confusing as it was before. As to exactly...
The debate highlighted several gaps in the budget discussion. Jamaica's $1.44 trillion budget includes $18 billion in new taxes, yet key questions remain about the fiscal strategy, tax impact, and recovery spending after Hurricane Melissa. Stronger scrutiny could have focused on the numbers behind growth projections and revenue measures. Do the figures in the budget fully support the government's claims? What do you think? Share your thoughts below.